There's something almost unsettling about someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. You know the type. While the rest of us are in a full negotiation with our snooze button, bargaining with the universe for just 5 more minutes, these people are already up, eyes open, feet on the floor. No drama, no existential crisis, just awake. And if you've ever shared a house with one of them, or dated one, or been unlucky enough to receive a cheerful text from one of them at 5:17 in the morning, you've probably wondered the same thing. Everyone wonders, what is actually going on inside their brain? Are they wired differently? Are they more disciplined? Are they just better at being human? Well, the answer is more fascinating than you'd expect, because it turns out the psychology behind natural early rising is really not about willpower at all. It's about identity, neurobiology, emotional regulation, and something surprisingly deep about how a person relates to time itself. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine two people. One of them sets 3 alarms, sleeps through 2, and stumbles into the kitchen at 8:45 looking like they just survived something. The other woke up at 4:58, 2 minutes before any alarm would have gone off, made coffee in a quiet house, maybe journaled, maybe just sat with the stillness for a while. Now, here's the thing most people get wrong. They look at person 2 and think, that person has incredible discipline. But discipline implies resistance. Discipline means you don't want to do something, but you force yourself anyway. What's actually happening with natural early risers is something much more interesting. For them, waking up early doesn't feel like a sacrifice, it feels like a reward. And that distinction changes everything. Psychologically, people who wake up at 5 a.m. naturally tend to have a strong internal locus of control. That's a term from Julian Rotter's work in the 1950s, and it basically means these individuals genuinely believe they are the primary architects of their own lives. They don't wake up because the world demands it. They wake up because it gives them a sense of authorship over their day before anyone else can write on it. Think about that for a second. Most of us wake up reactive. The alarm goes off, and immediately we're behind. We're checking messages, scanning notifications, responding to what the world has already decided matters. But the person who rises at 5 a.m. naturally gets something rare. They get a head start on their own narrative. And psychologically, that's enormous. It creates a feeling of sovereignty, of being ahead rather than behind. And that feeling cascades into confidence, reduced anxiety, and a greater sense of purpose throughout the entire day. Now, let's talk about the brain itself, because this isn't just philosophical. There's real neuroscience here. Your body runs on something called a circadian rhythm, which is essentially a 24-hour internal clock governed largely by a tiny cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus. Sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, I know, but it's one of the most important structures in your brain. This clock determines when you feel alert, when you feel sleepy, and when your body releases hormones like cortisol and melatonin. And here's the key. Not everyone's clock is set the same way. Chronobiology research, particularly work done by Till Ronenberg at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, has shown that your chronotype, whether you're a natural early riser or a night owl, is largely genetic. It's influenced by a gene called PER3, among others, and it's about as conchangeable as your height. So when someone wakes up at 5 a.m. naturally, their biology is literally nudging them awake. Their cortisol rises earlier, their body temperature shifts sooner, their melatonin fades faster. It's not that they've conquered laziness, their internal clock is simply set to an earlier time zone than yours. But here's where it gets psychologically rich, because even though chronotype is biological, the relationship a person builds with their early waking is deeply psychological. Studies published in the journal Emotion have found that morning-type individuals tend to report higher levels of positive affect, meaning they generally experience more positive emotions throughout the day. They also tend to score higher on measures of proactivity in conscientiousness in personality research. And this isn't because mornings are inherently magical, it's because modern society is structured around early risers. School starts early, work starts early, meetings happen in the morning, so people whose biology aligns with that structure experience less friction with the world. Less friction means less stress means more emotional bandwidth means better relationships, clearer thinking, and a stabler sense of self. It's not that early risers are superior humans, it's that the world was built on their schedule. Yet, there's a layer even deeper than that. Let me take you somewhere unexpected. People who naturally wake up at 5 a.m. often have a particular relationship with silence. Psychologically, they tend to be individuals that crave what we might call cognitive stillness, a period of low stimulation where the mind can process, plan, and simply exist without demand. In a world that is relentlessly loud, constantly pinging, always asking something of you, the early morning is one of the last remaining pockets of genuine quiet. And for certain psychological profiles, particularly people high in introversion or with a strong need for autonomy, that silence isn't just pleasant, it's essential. It's where they regulate, it's where they recharge. You could almost think of it as emotional hygiene. The way you brush your teeth to prevent decay, these individuals use the early morning to prevent psychological buildup, the clutter of unprocessed thoughts, unexpressed feelings, and unresolved tensions that accumulate when you never have a moment to yourself. There's also something fascinating about how early rising connects to a person's relationship to the future. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo, famous for the Stanford prison experiment, but also for his lesser-known work on time perspective, identified that people generally orient toward the past, the present, or the future in how they think and make decisions. Natural early risers tend to be strongly future-oriented. They wake up already thinking about what's ahead, not anxiously, but intentionally. They treat the morning as a kind of rehearsal space for the day, mentally walking through what matters, what they want to accomplish, how they want to show up. This future orientation is linked to higher goal achievement, better health outcomes, and even longer life expectancy. It's as if the act of waking up early itself is a declaration. Today matters. I'm going to meet it on my terms. Now, I want to be honest with you, because I think honesty matters more than inspiration. Not everyone who wakes up at 5 a.m. is thriving. Sometimes early waking is a symptom rather than a strength. Terminal insomnia, which is the clinical term for consistently waking up too early and being unable to fall back asleep, is a common feature of depression. When cortisol dysregulation or serotonin imbalances disrupt sleep architecture, the brain can push someone into wakefulness long before they're rested. So if you're waking up at 5 a.m., but you feel exhausted, hollow, or drained, that's not the same as what we've been talking about. That's your brain sending a distress signal, and it deserves compassion and attention, not a productivity routine. The distinction matters. Natural early risers wake up and feel ready. They feel a pull toward the day. If what you feel instead is a push out of sleep, something restless and uncomfortable, please be gentle with yourself and consider talking to someone who can help. But for those who genuinely wake with the dawn by nature, there's one more psychological element I want to explore, and it might be the most beautiful one. There's a concept in environmental psychology called soft fascination. It was developed by Rachel and Stephen Kaplan in their attention restoration theory, and it describes the kind of gentle, effortless attention you give to things like flowing water, rustling leaves, or a sky slowly changing color. Early morning is saturated with soft fascination. The light is different. The sounds are different. The air itself feels different. And exposure to this kind of environment has been shown to reduce mental fatigue, restore directed attention, and create a sense of connectedness to something larger than yourself. People who wake up at 5 a.m. naturally are often, without realizing it, giving themselves a daily dose of psychological restoration that most people only get on vacation. Every single morning, they experience a micro-retreat, a few minutes of the world before it gets complicated. So what does all of this mean for you? Maybe you're one of these people and you've never understood why you're wired this way. Maybe you've felt odd or been teased for going to bed early or wondered why the rest of the world seems to operate on a different frequency. If that's you, I want you to know that your early rising is not a quirk. It's a deeply rooted psychological and biological pattern that reflects how your brain processes time, seeks autonomy, and restores itself. It's a gift, even on the mornings when it doesn't feel like one. And if you're not a natural early riser,
Please don't treat this as a reason to set your alarm for 5 a.m. tomorrow and white-knuckle it through the day. That's not what the science supports. What the science supports is understanding your own chronotype, working with your biology instead of against it, in finding your own version of that quiet, sovereign space, whether it comes at dawn or at midnight. The real insight here isn't that 5 a.m. is magical. It's that the people who wake up then have accidentally discovered something profoundly important. They've found a daily practice of meeting themselves before the world shows up. And that, regardless of when your eyes open, is something worth thinking about. If this made you see early rising or your own sleep habits in a new way, I'd genuinely love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me when you naturally wake up and how it shapes your day. And if you want more videos that explore the hidden psychology behind everyday behaviors, subscribe and stick around, because we're just getting started.